Hey guys, welcome to SheKnowsArsenal. My name is Jessica. I'm your host. You can follow me on Twitter at JustinoTweets and at SheKnowsArsenal, and also on Instagram at JustinoGram. So make sure you follow me there. Welcome to another match preview. We're going to be going through the United Arsenal game that's going to be on Sunday. So we're going to be talking about potential lineups and situations regarding that fixture. What does it mean? How do we think things are going to go? But before that, we are going to kind of go through what happened in the transfer window, tie that up with a bow and throw it away because we have to get back to football at this point. The window, it's shut, it's done. I still see there's a lot of, I think, frustration around the way that the window ended. So, we'll touch on all those things, but ultimately, we got to move on. The show must go on. And I do think that there's been some overreaction. And I know I had some moments of complete overreaction, but I also think that there is some legitimacy to this frustration around not getting maybe one or two more players and what those two players could have done for this campaign. So, yeah, we'll talk about it all from a balanced and, calm point of view. So, hopefully there's no, name calling or anything like that. I know when we get kind of emotional about things, we can lose our heads, but it's just football. It's football and it's amazing, but it's just football. So let's keep it clean. But make sure you guys like the video, subscribe to the channel, and I'll be on the football terrace right after this to do straight facts with Terry, and we're going to be talking more about United Arsenal, so that should be fun. And I want to apologize for, you know, I had a to be at 4:30, and I put it out there on Twitter as 4:30, but I set it up for 4. So I'm sorry that I had you guys waiting, but let's go ahead and get into it. Can you guys hear me, see me, all those types of things? You guys know I have issues with internet and all that kind of stuff out here, but yeah. So yeah. All right, let's see. TJ Emerson says, "Hey Jess, how are you?" I'm good. I'm feeling very excited about the game at the weekend because my entire like Arsenal uh background is kind of based around Manchester United, Arsenal being one of the biggest fixtures. So I'm excited about it because I'm going through a good period. We're going through a good period, and I'm hoping that there's some quality in this match. I do think the last couple of times that we've went up against them, there hasn't been a lot of quality on both sides. And so this time around, because both teams are kind of riding on a high, I do think it has the potential to be somewhat of a reigniting of the old school Arsenal versus United. That's what I'm hoping for. So yeah, I'm excited about it. Richie Rabbit is saying we aren't favorites for this match. Who cares whether we're favorites or not? Nobody's ever going to consider us favorites because nobody rates Arsenal. That's just the reality. Even when we're going to play against teams that are clearly not as good as us, we're rarely considered favorites by the media, so I really don't care whether or not people think we're favorites. Um, Manchester United are at home. We don't do well away from home at Old Trafford, and they're on a 3-game winning streak, and they've brought in some really big name players, so I would imagine that the media would skew in their direction, and that's not anything that, like, we should care about, to be honest. Um you know? Ronald says, just 2-1 either way it could go. I think it could go either way. Joshua says, United have better depth than us, equating to a more successful season. I'm not sure if I actually agree with that because it all things are not equal. They're still learning Ten Hag's system. They're still kind of working out the kinks. When I've watched them play over the last 3 games, even though they've won them, it's been really close and they haven't necessarily been completely dominant in all of those games. So, yes, they have more depth, so that's something that they may have that's better than us, but we have a better continuity. We're more ingrained with our philosophy and the way that we wanna play. We've been together longer, and I think those things do matter in the grand scheme. It cannot be ignored, and we'll also be talking about our depth, and I think seeing it with your eyes, it's not as bad as people are making out to seem. We definitely have holes in our squad, but it's nowhere near like as bad as people are making it out to seem. So, but nevertheless, like I want this to be a good game. Like whether we batter them or it's close, I want us to you know, I want it to be an exciting match because they haven't been that exciting over the last couple of years. Saida says if we sign Louise, I would have felt confident in getting a result. I think the best we'll get is a draw. Well, it depends on who else is there. I think when you look at the way that we played, even without Thomas Partey, we've looked good. We've looked good even without Thomas Partey, even without El Neni. And there's not so much of an over reliance on that position as there was before. So as long as Sambi can have a good game and we have Ramsdale and Odegaard, I think we're fine. Like I really do think we're fine because it's not like we don't have Gabriel Jesus, Saka, and Martinelli up top. We still have pretty much our same back line. So beyond that, I still don't I don't really see where there's like this big shift and like they're gonna be so much better than us because of blank. So I think it's pretty even, but I would say that I feel pretty confident. Um so yeah, but let's get into it. There's 100 of you guys in here, so like the video and subscribe to the channel. Um let's get into this. So getting into just the transfer window so we can kind of wrap this up and give our ratings for it. Before the window, a lot of us had kind of spoken about what we expected Arsenal to do. Arsenal always spoke about bringing in a midfielder, bringing in a striker, and bringing in like a left back. Those were like the three things in a backup goalkeeper. But as Arsenal fans, we always have our like expectations of the window. And so we wanted a striker, maybe a second striker. We spoke about that a lot, having more than one striker because we had lost Aubameyang and Lacazette. Left back, midfielder, an 8 or a 6. It depends on who you talk to. Some people felt like we needed the 8 to replace Xhaka. Other people felt like we needed a backup to Thomas Partey. We needed the backup goalkeeper, and I'm putting an asterisk next to a right back and a left-sided center back because some people were saying it, but I have a hard time seeing those as actual priorities in this window, but mostly it was like those top 5 things that we needed to get done. And in terms of incomings, this is what we got done. We got the striker, we got Gabriel Jesus, we got Zinchenko as the left back, we got the backup goalkeeper, and then we brought in Fabio Vieira and Marquinhos. Marquinhos was meant to be like a future signing, so I don't really count him on a lot of this, but the other 4 are meant to be first team players, and so, we did hit some of those benchmarks, and I do think the most important player in all of this is probably gonna be Fabio Vieira because he's being forgotten because we don't quite know what he is, we don't know what his level is. A scenario could be that he's good enough where we actually made the right decision not to go after other players. Or it could be that maybe he's kind of like a Sambi, and although he's talented, he's not close enough to actually step into those roles. Now, I kind of believe it's the former and not the latter. I think we've just yet to see the player play. But this is somebody that as soon as we signed him, there was no more talk of a midfielder. So this signing potentially took away the need in terms of the club to bring in another midfielder because we were not going to bring in anybody unless we had gotten that El Neni injury. And I think that that's significant. Like, I do think people, like, we look at the window and we think it's the same from minute one to the end, but things change due to like injuries, opportunities and things like that. And Arsenal felt like Fabio Vieira was such a good opportunity that I do think that they turned away from Tielemans. They turned away from other number 8/number 10s and went for this player, probably because of his versatility. Probably because of his versatility. They spoke a lot about it that he could play right wing, he could play false nine, he could play in the 8 and 10 position. And we know that Arteta really, really rates players with that versatility. All of our players that Arteta has pretty much brought in have been versatile field players. So, yeah, I think
Vieira is very key in how we're gonna really view the window, because if he comes in and he starts playing and it's clear that he can play the 8 role and he can also play on the right wing, we may not feel like it is that big of a deal, but that's that we need to see that later. Like, we need to see that later. Right now, it's all up in the air, right? You guys, like I said, like, it is just football, so obviously we have, like, our own opinions and stuff like that, but we don't need to get ugly in the comments. Like, let's, let everybody have their own opinions. We don't have to get ugly. Um, but yeah, those are the incomings that we had. And then another part of incomings that I do think people that are especially negative around the window are failing to remember that these players exist, and that incomings are players that we bought, but they're also players coming back off of loan and players that we've renewed. And two players that I do think have made a significant difference in how I view the window is William Saliba coming back and Eddie Nketiah being renewed. And that's I think that's it feels weird for me to say that, because I didn't think Saliba would be an Arsenal player past this window. I had very big concerns around whether or not Arsenal were gonna be able to retain him, and Eddie Nketiah was somebody that I was not high on at the end of the season. I thought we needed to go into the market and bring in 2 strikers or something like that. But Eddie Nketiah, for me, if you were to go out into the market and bring in a number 2 striker, and we have to be real, and, like, we'll look at and we'll compare some other teams and how their squads look. But when you really look at it, it's very rare to see teams that have a starting striker and the guy right underneath them is, like, the same quality. That's just not really the reality. It's very rare that a striker that's the same quality as the starter would stay at that club. Like, it's just not real. So then you have to look at what the other options are. And I would rate Nketiah kind of around that same group of, like, the strikers in the mid-table. And so basically you have a striker that could still get better, that fits into everything that we want to do, that is growing as a player. But right now, like, he's like a mid-table striker, Premier League type level. And so for me, like, that makes a huge difference, because if you go back to this slide, what we said is that we wanted 2 strikers because we lost Aubameyang and we lost Lacazette. And I still see people saying we only brought in 1 striker. And we didn't. We re-signed Nketiah, and that makes a difference. Saliba, top class player, definitely makes a difference, especially because now we can move White into the right back position, and now we have quite a bit of depth there. So they make a big difference. Like, they do make a big difference. And I think people that want to be negative around the window conveniently leave this out because they know that these are good players for us to have. TJ Emerson says Nketiah isn't good though. I feel like that is a categorical lie. Like, Nketiah not being a good player, like, is he may not be world class, but he's 22-year-old, 23-year-old striker that could still get better, that looks good when he comes out and plays for us. So it's weird that people are still holding on to this idea of Nketiah not being good enough, because that's what they remember him being. Maybe that is your true opinion, but I still think people are being disingenuous there, because you have to have seen that Nketiah has gotten better. And who would you have been able to bring in that would have been better than him, that would have been okay with being a number 2? I think that's the question that people need to ask themselves. Like, are you gonna bring in a Tammy Abraham to play behind Gabriel Jesus? Probably not. You're probably not. Like, that's probably not gonna happen. He's gonna wanna start. So, those types of things do matter. Um, let's see. Timbo says, "Nah, Eddie is good. If Gordon was worth 60, Eddie is above him." Joshua says he hasn't even scored this year. Well, he hasn't played that many minutes. So Saka hasn't really scored this year either. And I don't think we're out here saying that Saka is not a good player because he hasn't scored this season. Like, come on, you guys. I know we want to force the Eddie narrative, but it's not really washing. I'm sorry. Jack says, Nketiah was here. That makes no sense. It does make sense. It does make sense because he was gonna leave on a free. So, had we had not renewed him, we wouldn't have had that player. So, it does matter. I know, like, I feel like there's people in the comments and of course, it's not all positive, but you can't force it. Like, renewals and people coming back from loans do make a difference if you're gonna lose them for free. They count, they count. TJ says, "I've been saying Saka should be dropped just because he's not that good as of late." He's actually been just fine. He's hasn't been as good as he could be. Like, he can go up a level, but like his underlying metrics are good. He has 2 assists. Like, Saka hasn't been that bad. And who are you going to drop Saka for? Semi says Eddie comes off the bench for 15 minutes a match. Hard to come off the bench and score, but he impacts the game a lot. You can tell. Exactly. So that's pretty much what are the extent of who came in is. Like, you have the actual incomings, and then you have renewals and loanees. Then we have kind of like our notable outgoings. There's been more outgoings than this, but the ones that I think are most significant are Leno, Torreira, Bellerin, Lacazette, and Guendouzi. They've all left permanently, some for fees, some for not. And yeah, I mean, Leno at one point was a starter. Lacazette was starting for us last season. Guendouzi's been gone for a while. Torreira's been gone for a while, and so is Bellerin. But these players are gone, for good. And this is kind of like the last group of the players that we like desperately needed to get rid of. And so, yeah, like I think outgoings wise, I think we still need to get more bigger fees for some of these players. I do think that we give up too easily, and for some reason it's like nobody wants to spend any money on our players. There's something wrong with that. And beyond this, Arsenal's really not going to have the excuse of having like all these players on big wages that you can't get rid of. Like, a lot of our players are on pretty modest wages, and I think the next players that leave the club are gonna be probably young players that we can get good fees for. So, an example of that would be, like, let's say Emile Smith Rowe doesn't kick on, maybe a team like Aston Villa comes back in for him, they offer us 40 million for him. I mean, we should be getting like 40 million for Emile Smith Rowe, at the very least, so maybe even more than that, because if Gordon's going for 60 million, then he probably is more than that. So this is kind of like the last, group of players that it could be looked at as like, okay, it probably was difficult to get rid of these players. Beyond that, we need to start getting bigger fees, because I do think not being able to get fees for some of these players impacted our ability to get more incomings. Going after Douglas Luiz and only, I mean, they can say that they only wanted to spend 25 million on him and that's all he was worth. But had we had been able to sell Bernd Leno for 15 million, or sell Torreira for 15 million, or sell Guendouzi for 40 million, like we probably should have been able to, you would have had the money to make sure that you could bring in somebody in an emergency situation. And so I do think not being able to recoup fees hurt us in this window, because those additional players that we could have brought in, probably we just didn't have enough to put down on them, in terms of like that initial fee. I think we had very little left at the end of the window. So yeah, that's definitely something that needs to be addressed. This is the last window where it's going to be like we have all these players on big wages that we can't get rid of. Um, and notable loans. I think one of the best parts about our window was the loaning that we did. I think we've loaned out a lot of our players to really good teams and they're doing really well. Charlie Patino's doing well on his loan. Um, Balogun, I think he has 4 goals already so far for Rems. Tavares, what does he have? 3 goals already so far for Marseille. Austin Trusty's doing well at Birmingham City. And then Marcelo, like he's gone on a loan. I forget, it was like a second tier Spanish team. And also Aziz, he went to Ibiza, something like that. And then Brooke Norton Cuffey has also went on a decent loan. The only one that I do think that stands out as probably being a little bit suspect is Pepe, considering we didn't bring in another right winger. So that's one that I do look at, like, could we have not have tried to keep him? Because in Europa League, Pepe is pretty good. Lower level opposition player, like teams in Europe, he does quite well. Maybe Arsenal are looking at it from the perspective of he needs to be playing consistently so we can get a fee. But ultimately, like, I'm not sure that I would be relying on Nelson and Marquinhos, to make sure that Saka doesn't, fall apart. So, yeah, that's the only one that I look at like, okay, why did we do that? if we weren't gonna bring in a winger. We are saving £10 million, which is pretty good, but would it not be worth it to just have, like, a senior right winger there to use in those instances? Maybe it would have been beneficial to us, but in terms of the loans overall, the way our players have kind of just got into those positions, got into those clubs and really exploded, I think shows that the loan system is working. And when you look at it, some of the players that are on loan could definitely fill in those positions moving forward. Somebody like Tavares, like if he does really well at Marseille, either we sell him for a good chunk of money or he comes back into the squad and does a Saliba. Balogun as well. Brooke Norton Cuffey, a right back. A lot of people feel like we need a right back. So these types of loans and these types of players could definitely fill in those squad positions moving forward. And ultimately, they're being seen by a lot of different teams. And maybe we could get some good fees moving forward. So, yeah, beyond the Pepe one, I think we did a good job there. I think we did a good job there. Yo-Yo says Arteta has poorly managed Saka. The manager isn't and hasn't been forced to burden the Englishman. Let's see. Ayonle says, I'm sad Jess not signing a six deflated me big time. Could cost us again for this United team. Let's see. True Sets Free says Arteta's ego ruined Pepe, in my opinion. I'm not sure if I agree with that. He's had opportunities and he hasn't taken them, and he's a grown up. So I'm not quite sure that I buy that Arteta ruined Pepe. I don't think we should even bought Pepe from the beginning. Emery never wanted him. He wanted Zaha. And I think just starting him off with that 72 pound, fee, I think he crumbled under that as well. So I think it's the culpability for Pepe is Pepe, the club, and maybe a little bit of Arteta and Emery. But to just blame it all on Arteta, I think is disingenuous. Saida says it's frustrating that the club prefer to look at the business side more than football. We're never willing to take a risk and move up to the next level. Instead, about we just about or don't make our targets. Well, I mean, we can assume that we're not going to make our targets based on feeling like we didn't get everything that we are supposed to get, but we need to let the season kind of plan out because we still are playing well and we still look good. So, I get feeling frustrated and everybody is kind of like doomsdaying everything and saying, well, we're not going to meet our targets now because we didn't get Douglas Louise. But I'm not sure it's as simple as that. Arteta said that Thomas Partey is going to be back in a couple of weeks. Sambi looked pretty good in the six role. Like, I'm just not convinced that it's as bad as people are making out to seem. It's just we're disappointed that they just didn't go ahead and get the player in. But if they were only willing to spend 25 million on him and Aston Villa were never really willing to sell him, what are we going to do then? I mean, I think you can look at it from all sides and say some pros and some cons there. Let's see. Proud to be a Geordie says depends on what your targets are, and if it's realistic top four, then you should be okay. Well, I think that's a very, very good point. Is that I'm trying to figure out if this team and this group is not good enough to get top 4, then why have I seen people so gassed for the last couple of weeks? I'm not really understanding, like, is it because you guys felt like we were gonna be pushing for the title or no? Because the group that I see right now is more than good enough to get top 4. It may not be good enough to get, you know, top 2 or fight for the title, but it's definitely good enough to get top 4. And even though we have injuries, we still have more depth than we did last season. It's not Manchester City depth, but nobody has Manchester City depth. We're gonna look at that. We're gonna look at that in a second because I do think people are getting it wrong. Like we don't have Manchester City depth, but nobody actually does. And maybe Chelsea and Manchester United have better depth, but a lot of that is because they bought overpriced players that are still hanging around that aren't really a part of their project anyway. They're trying to move those players on. So I'm not quite sure you can keep that as like the best depth you could have. Like it's strange. John P says, I think they might have expected Luis to put in a written transfer request. He didn't force the move. I expected Villa to do what they did otherwise. Yeah, I mean, they didn't want to sell. They didn't want to sell. So, I mean, I don't know what else they could have done. Mufasa says, Jesus and Zinni are next level. Odegaard and even Jack are pulling a madness on a consistent basis. Yeah, I think we play well. I think we play well. C. Wilder says 3 injuries in the same position isn't normal. Well, it's not 3 injuries in the same position. You know, Zinchenko right now is a left back. So even though he can play midfield and he probably will for us at some point, it's just unfortunate that El Neni got injured. It wasn't something that they could have ever, predicted. So I get why people are upset. It's because we're seeing the injuries and we wanted more signings, but like I still feel like some of this is just a little bit over the top. So what we basically missed out on was the winger, the midfielder, 8/6, depending on who you're talking to, the left-sided center back, which wasn't really a priority, and a right back. So with the winger and the midfielder, like for me, it's just a matter of what Fabio Vieira's level actually is. I do think that he could be the key to all of this because he can play both positions. The number 6 position, like I would have preferred us to just go out and get a player. I actually, at the beginning of the window thought that bringing in a number 6 probably was, uh, the best thing to do, and then once they re-signed El Neni, I was like, "Okay, they're not gonna address it, so let's move on to the left 8." And I was pretty comfortable with what we had until El Neni got injured, and then quickly it was, "Okay, just we're not gonna get the winger, get the CDM." But we didn't get any of those things, so it's we feel a little bit short, and Arteta said that he felt like the team was short, so I understand why people are frustrated. I really, really do, but I don't think that means that everything that we've done hasn't been good, and I feel like that's what's annoying me a little bit is that people are acting as though we've done no good business because we didn't get one additional signing. And I don't feel like that is fair. Like, Jesus and Zinchenko have been exceptional for us so far. We haven't seen Fabio Vieira, and Saliba and Nketiah have made a difference. So, I'm having a hard time connecting with the idea that the window was like a 3 or a 4 or even a 5 because we have signed good players. We just didn't get, like, 1 player, and we probably should have gotten it, and you can be mad at the club for it, but ultimately we've done good business. There's 245 of you guys in here. Make sure you like the video and subscribe to the channel. Hold on, you guys. I just need to plug in this. It's annoying me. Yeah. So, yeah, that's kind of where we are. That's kind of where we are. And this is me a day after feeling super disappointed like everybody else. I had my meltdown and we needed to get Douglas Luiz in. We needed to do this. We needed to do that. But I just can't connect with it the way that some people are even a day after. So let's take a look at this. This is something that somebody put together where they kind of went player for player, position for position, and compared the midfields, the attack, goalkeepers, and defenders for Manchester City, Arsenal, and Liverpool to show kind of where our depth actually is because we shouldn't really be comparing ourselves to Manchester United and Chelsea and those teams. The teams that people always want to compare to because the best teams are Liverpool and Manchester City. So they got the goalkeepers wrong here because we do have Carl Hein as well. So we have 3 goalkeepers just like everybody else. In terms of defenders, our depth is right up there with them. I think defensively, our depth is as close to the top 3 as anything else that we have. White, Saliba, Gabriel, Zinchenko, Tomiyasu, and Tierney is really good depth. If you look at Liverpool, they have Trent, Konate, Virgil van Dijk, Rabos, a kid named Ramsey, Matip, who's always injured, Gomez, who's okay, Nat Phillips, who's not great, and Sikamis, who is quite good. And then Manchester City, they have their team. They have Walker, Diaz, Laporte, Cancelo, Stones, Ake, Akanji, and Gomez. Gomez is kind of like a project. He's a younger player. He probably won't play that much. Akanji is not good. If you watch Dortmund, Akanji is not good. And Ake is okay. So it's really those top 5 that are really like super quality players. If you move into their midfield, it's interesting because I think also because City have so many players that play different positions, it's kind of okay for them to operate like this. but they have Rodri, Bernardo, KDB, Phillips, and Gundogan. Really good quality there. Liverpool's interesting because they have a lot of players, but not a lot of them can stay fit. Fabinho, Hendo, Thiago Keita, Jones, who's not that great, Milner, who's over the hill, Elliott, very talented young player, Cavallo, talented young player, Ox is crap, and they just brought in Artur. And then we have Partey, Xhaka, Odegaard, Lokanga, Vieira, ESR, and Elneny. So I'm looking at that and I'm saying, okay, probably we need one more player, right? Somebody to replace Elneny potentially, is would probably bring that group up significantly, but I don't really see, like, that big of a gap. From Man City, it's really a quality thing. From Liverpool, they have just a lot of players, but I think we're okay. Like, I think we're okay. Um, Ox does not start in our midfield. You're over egging it now. Like, I'm okay, like, I get when people are, they wanna make their point, but Oxlade-Chamberlain does not start in our midfield. He doesn't start over Xhaka, and he doesn't start over Thomas Partey. Like, it's a joke. Like, come on. And then in terms of forwards, um, Grealish, Foden, Palmer, who's a very good young player, Mahrez, Haaland, and Alvarez. Diaz, Salah, Nunez, Firmino, and Jota. Martinelli, Saka, Jesus, Nketiah, Nelson, and Marquinhos. I think that's where we really needed an additional player. Like, I think that's really where we needed one. Like, we needed one more quality attacker, like a Neto or somebody like that, to really move the level of that group up. So, in terms of where we are in comparison to the other like the top 2 teams in the country, I do think that we're like 2 players short. That's what I really think it is, 2 really quality players short. I'm not sure that that's necessarily like Tielemans. I think it could be Pedro Neto, but maybe we get those players next time around. But did anybody expect Arsenal to be at the same level as Manchester City and Liverpool maybe 3 years in? I don't really think so. I think we've made some really good strides to get closer to these 2 sides, but it's taken them a while to get there, and to be honest, Manchester City on a completely different planet than everybody else. So, looking at it this way, I think you can look at it and say, "Okay, maybe we're not as far away as people are making it out to seem." It's just a matter of how much can Arteta get out of the squad that we have, and can we avoid major injuries and kind of keep the squad tight and good, for the rest of the season. But yeah, I don't see that much. Like, I see a gap there, but it's not as big as people are making out to seem. The Truth Sets Free, thank you so much for your super chat, says the disappointment is if you have a 7 out of 10 window and all you need is 2 more players to make it 10 out of 10 and challenge for the league, then what are you doing, Edu? Edu gets a C minus since last January for me. Well, how do you know it was Edu though? I mean, there's a lot of assumptions here that Arsenal have never ending money. There were already rumors out there that we needed to operate within FFP. So the idea that like we should have overspent and been almost in trouble for FFP in order to bring in 2 players so that we can fight for the league doesn't make sense for me. There's a lot of people have made good points, even people that don't really back Arteta or back KSE that much, that we can't just spend. The last 3 windows, we've spent quite a bit, and last summer, we spent a lot of money. We've spent a lot of money, and we've done a lot to try to get rid of players that don't suit us, and you might wanna fight me about Aubameyang, you can fight me about Guendouzi, but there was a lot of freaking players in this team that were dog shit, a lot of them that Adu and Arteta did not bring to this football club. So not only were they trying to get those players out, but they wanted to bring quality players in. And we've spent a lot of money, but you can't just spend. That's not how it works. Unless you are owned by a nation state, you have to operate within a certain qualifications. You have to stay within a certain line. And so the idea that like they just held back for no reason because they didn't want Arsenal to be great, to me doesn't make sense. I think we were operating within a small amount of money and we just couldn't push, especially because Neni got injured. So like I get the fume and I get it, but like, do you guys really think we could have spent 250 million in this window to get absolutely everything? after what we've spent in the last 2 windows? And after all the cancellation contracts, all of the players that we've had to get rid of, do you guys actually think that we were gonna spend 250 million and bring in 7 more players this window? Is that what you thought? Like, that's why I don't like, I get being disappointed about not getting the central defensive midfielder and not getting the winger, but the idea that, like, they are purposefully sabotaging Arsenal and there's not a parameter or something that's blocking them from being able to get this done, I can't connect with it, like, I just really, really can't, and it's not just if that were the case, everybody would just spend, 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 spend. If it's just, "Oh, a couple of players would get you here, a couple of players would get you there." You have to operate within your means, and I think Arsenal are doing that, and people are frustrated because they feel like we're so close, but, I mean, if somebody would have told you that at this point, we would feel like we were 2 players away from being able to challenge, I think that's more of an indication of how good the rebuild has been versus how badly we've been run. It's just I don't know. I don't connect with it because I don't think Arteta and Edu and KSC were sitting there saying, "Well, we could just get these 2 players, but we're just not because we don't feel like it." We have to operate within certain parameters. We all know this, don't we? But yeah. Yo-Yo says you have to prioritize why the decisions to renew Xhaka, El Neni, and sign Sambi and Vieira were massive. Well, I get that aspect of things, like, we could have done things differently. El Neni, for me, I don't think we should have re-signed, and maybe we should have used the money for Vieira to do something else, but we also haven't seen Vieira, and I think we are doomsdaying things and acting like we have made a mistake before we even lost a game. Like, we haven't actually lost a game yet, so until these things play out and you can definitively say that we've made a mistake by signing certain players, I don't think you can actually say that, I really, really don't, but that's not how I would have done things. I would have let El Neni go, and I would have probably taken the Vieira money to bring in another center midfielder, but that's not what they did. They chose to bring in Vieira, they brought in Zinchenko, they brought in Gabriel Jesus, and we just kinda have to see how things work out because nothing has actually happened yet except for we didn't get a player on the last day of the window. Nothing has actually happened. So yeah, like I kind of get what you're saying, but at the same time, nothing has happened to make it seem like I still don't see Sambi and Vieira as bad signings. I really don't. I don't see it. Um, but I understand the fume, like, I really do. There's almost 300 of you guys in here like the video and subscribe to the channel. And again, I've kind of explained what I haven't liked about the window and what I have liked about the window because there are 2 sides of it, and I still think people that are trying to really nail home this, the window has been a failure, are being disingenuous about the good things that we've done in this window. Basically, we just didn't sign 1 additional player. We missed out by 1 player. And I don't think not getting that one player is gonna we're catastrophizing everything. Um, so now, like, this is kind of what the depth is gonna look like in terms of, like, if you wanna see it in formation form. And the reason why I don't have 2 completely different 11s is because Arteta is not going to completely rotate in every single match, like, or every single Europa League match. There will be players that play in both competitions. That's life, that's how it's gonna go. We know this, that's how it was last time around. We're not gonna play a completely different 11 every single time. But when I look at it laid out like that, I don't actually think that that group on the right can't beat Europa League teams in the early stages of group stages. Like, I don't see it like that. I actually think it looks pretty good. I think you can mix and match some of these players. Put Smith Rowe can also pop in for Odegaard. Vieira could probably pop in for Xhaka. So we have some options there. But when I see it laid out on both sides, where the left side is kind of like our best 11, and then the right side is probably the rotated options for Europa League, I don't actually think it's that bad. Now, Gunnar Blog said that Nelson has been given assurances that he'll get opportunities. It is what it is. I don't think I believe that Nelson is going to, like, revive his career, but ultimately, like, That's the option that we have. Vieira is still a player that we have yet to see. Smith Rowe, good player, just needs to stay fit. And Sambi does a good job, when he's playing with a good starting 11. When he's playing with a bunch of people that are also rotated, he's not very good. But that back line is basically our starting back line from last season, but without Gabrielle. So that's not that bad. It's not, no team has two starting 11s, 24 or, 22 players that are all like the same quality. It's a myth that you're going to have some drop off, but this drop off is nowhere near as bad as it was last season. It just isn't. Or the year prior when we were actually in Europa League, like, it was nowhere near as bad. So, it's not about being, like, totally excited about this group and, like, not feeling like there's not gonna be struggles. I just don't connect with the idea that it's, like, the worst thing in the world. I just cannot see it. So, yeah. Lucas says, "Can see, Lino Sousa off the bench in Europa when one of Zinni or KT can rest." Yeah, I can see that as well. Um, let's see, oh, you guys are still asking questions. Elliot Roberts says, "Why do I see Xhaka in first teams? Why is there no succession plan in place? Damning." Well, this is how I know that people just wanna be upset about things. Arteta already said that Vieira is going to be fighting with Xhaka for that left 8 position. He can play right wing and play Odegaard's position, but ultimately, he is the succession plan for Xhaka. So we do have it, we just haven't seen it yet, and people keep forgetting that we spent 30 million on Vieira. We haven't seen him play yet, and if he turns out to be good, I think a lot of people are gonna be like, "Oh, now I see the plan." C. Wilder says, "I'm going to be watching Sambi so close on Sunday." I think a lot of people are. John P says, "To be fair to Nelson, he played pretty well at the back end of last season." Yo-Yo says Arteta liked Nelson when he was head coach. He that was the first player that he kind of put his arm around. It was the first player. So at this point, we have to back him. Like, it's Europa League group stages that he'll probably be playing in. They can play in those games, you guys. It's not that deep. I really don't think it's that deep, like as deep as people are making it out to seem. It's just that we don't have two of the same level starting 11s, and there's some drop off there. Everybody has drop off between their starters and their non-starters. It's just how it goes. Lucas says Sambi would play Xhaka's position in Europa if El Neni was fit. Exactly. You could drop El Neni in there and Sambi could play there, or Vieira can play there because, again, from Arteta's mouth, he said that Vieira is going to be fighting for it with Xhaka for that spot. So it could actually be Vieira. Um, Ebby says Vieira will be under pressure because of his price tag. Will he? It was just 30 million. I mean, really? Let's see. Lone Star says we can't relax Clive. City are the benchmark. Well, what did Clive say? I don't see Clive. Oh, Clive, Man City says Arsenal fans act like spoiled kids. Relax. You were in the mud not too long ago now. Kay says these are the same players we considered crap while they were playing us into mediocrity. But when the market refuses to pay good money for the same crap, it is fault. Shaking my head. That's a good point. Um, Dab says Sambi is good though. He is good, but I do think there's a little bit of, like, just overdoing it at this point. Like, these players are not bad players. There's drop off between your starters and your non-starters, and the idea that we have no depth is a complete and utter lie. We don't have the type of depth you might want, but nobody has that type of depth except for Manchester City. It is a complete fallacy that all the top 6 teams have 2 players in each position that are exact same level. It's a fallacy. It's not realistic. Martinelli says Marquinhos is more exciting than Vieira. I disagree. I actually think Vieira is gonna be super, super good. He's gonna be somewhat of like our Foden, Bernardo Silva type of player, and we've needed somebody like that. Lucas says Sambi. Oh yeah, you already said that. Let's see. Guy says you're keeping your cool. Well, Jess, a lot of negative and entitled comments today. Well, I just knew that this is what it was going to be like. I know people are upset. There's some people that are upset and that's just how they are. And then there's some people that are forcing it because they have other agendas because they don't like Arteta and Edu, and we've been winning games, so they haven't had a reason to be upset. But ultimately, We hit most of our marks, we just didn't bring in one additional player, and I don't think we should be catastrophizing the entire season because of it. Like, I don't connect with it. It may bite us in the butt, but I still see more depth there than I did last season. You can't tell me that, Tierney was our starter, now he's a backup. Tomiyasu was our starter, now he's a backup. You know what I mean? Like, Smith Rowe was a starter, now he's a backup. Yeah. Let's see. Dev M Arteta changing the formation to accommodate players where we need bodies. No, I don't. I don't think Arteta changes the formation very much. Maybe a 4-4-2 if you want to get Nketiah and Jesus on the field on the pitch at once, but no, I don't see it. I actually think we'll continue to kind of play our way. Let's see. Um, Araguagua says, "Just looking good, but I fear this United this weekend because of our injury." We'll talk about that in just a second. Jonas, thank you so much for your super chat. Says, "I think DM will expose us in the coming weeks. Fans, prepare yourself for the drop off." Well, Sambi will play for the next couple of weeks, and Arteta said in his press conference that Thomas Partey could be back in the next week or so. So I'm not sure that it's as bad as people are making out to seem. And again, Thomas Partey hasn't been tip top this season anyway, and we've played 2 games without him and we looked just fine. So it's kind of like I get it, but I actually think there's a bigger drop off between Tierney and Zinchenko than there was between like
There's something like when I have everything plugged in at once, it's all like acts like so weird. So I'm sorry. But yeah, like I actually think there was more drop off between Zinchenko and Tierney than there actually was in midfield. So yeah, I mean, maybe it will expose us. But again, Thomas Partey would be back in a couple of weeks. So if he's fit for the next 3, 4, 5 weeks, then we can do. Um, there's 260 of you guys in here like the video and subscribe to the channel. Samuel says we shouldn't crucify Vieira before he kicks the ball. I trust Edu and Arteta, unknown players. Well, Vieira wasn't actually unknown. Like he's very highly rated. He played Champions League and Europa League for Porto. He had what 15 goals and like 6 assists, or no, I think it was like 15 assists and 6 goals or something like that. This is not a crap player. Like he's not shit, so we just haven't seen him play yet. And so it's giving people an opportunity to kind of just like be upset more because they're acting like we only signed one player, you know, but we've signed more than that. Um, Elliot Roberts is saying that party drop off may end up killing our top 4 quests at the end. Um, but did you see a huge drop off between Thomas Partey and El Neni and Thomas Partey and Sambi? I didn't because we don't rely upon him as much as we used to. Of course, he's a class player. Like, of course, like he's an amazing player on his day, but I just didn't see it as much as I feel like some people are saying that they saw it. Um, and so, yeah, we're kind of at the point. Oh, let me unplug this maybe. Hold on, you guys. I need to unplug something because everything is like flicking and acting a fool and it's getting on my nerves. Um, Give me 1 second, you guys. I just want to make sure. Light might turn off. Give me 1 second. There. I think that's better. But yeah, I didn't see as much of a drop off as I think people are making it out to seem, but that's just me. Trevelli says his injury record low key infuriates me. It does to me as well. Like he's definitely somebody that we need to replace. He's definitely somebody for obvious reasons we need to replace. But, in the short term, if we can use, Sambi and maybe another player and Thomas Partey for the meantime, I don't think it'll be like the death of us. But yeah, Yo-Yo says there's very little to criticize, but there's a lot to be anxious about if you don't have certainty in the manager or the squad. Yeah, no, I get that there's anxiety and then there's completely lying about the reality of the squad. And that's what I'm really pushing back against. That our depth hasn't got any better is a fallacy. that our window was an absolute failure, I think is an overreaction. And I think a lot of us have anxiety because we've seen how the injuries have hurt us, but ultimately that doesn't mean that it's going to be exactly the same. That's not our system does not rely upon Thomas Partey to get us from point A to point B at every moment. Everything flowed through him last season. Now it doesn't flow through him as much as it did last season. So if that's the case, you could probably put in a player that's not as good as him in that position and we still survive it. Of course, we can't float 5 or 6 injuries. No team can float that. But if we have 1 or 2 injuries at a time, I don't think it'll kill us off the way that people are catastrophizing at the moment. So yeah. Let's see. Um, but yeah, it's Thomas Partey's injuries are not great, but they said he'll be back in a couple weeks. Daniel says Sambi's done a really good job. Thinks Sambi is better when he has good players around him, Saliba behind him, and experience around him. Exactly. So let's move forward. I think when I look at it like this, I don't think the depth is as bad as people are making out to seem. I think we're catastrophizing a little bit. It's Europa League group stages that we're talking about this other team playing and players in that team popping in every once in a while. Like, and when I look at the team on the left, which is our starting 11, like our main starting 11, that team is definitely good enough to get into the top four. So, I'm about to ask because I've seen people go into, oh, we're going to finish mid table, and that's just such an overreaction. So, this is what Arteta said. He said, on whether the squad has enough depth to compete in both the Premier League and Europa League. It is the team that we have. And for me, it's the best squad and best players that I have available. There's nothing else we can do. We have an academy as well that we have to use, and we'll try to utilize the players as best as possible. And on whether he's disappointed not to have signed a midfielder, no, we had a lot of things to still do in the squad. You see the amount of departures compared to the number we have recruited. The club has done a phenomenal job and put everything on the table to try to bring in players and profiles that we wanted. We did business pretty early, but unfortunately, in the past 72 hours, Thomas Partey got injured in the same place as last time, and then El Neni has a long-term injury. Then we had to react in the market, and we tried, but at the end of the day, we have to bring in a player that we feel is right for the team and for the club, and we didn't manage to do that. And another part of the whole Douglas Luiz thing that I think people missed is that there were people in the club that weren't 100% sold on him. He's a Kia client. Kia was really pushing it. And ultimately, there were people in the club that didn't feel like it was the right signing. They only wanted to attribute a certain amount of money to it. Aston Villa didn't want to sell. It didn't work out. You know, I don't know if bringing in a loan would have been that much better. It depends. Like, it depends on what that loan would have been, but I'm sure they looked at our tour. I think I saw that they looked at our tour. Like I read that they didn't want to do that deal. And so that's the decision that they made. And so I think at this point, we just kind of have to move on from it and hope that our injuries are not as bad as people are catastrophizing them to be. Like, you know what I mean? Um, and so my overall rating for the window is a 7 out of 10. Like, we needed the striker. We got the striker. We got the left back that can also play midfield, which I think people are also forgetting. We brought in Vieira, who I think is going to be very, very good. We got the backup goalkeeper. We got Marquinhos. This an extra signing, and then Saliba came back, and Nketiah was re-signed, and he's done really, really well. If we can get Saka on a new deal, Martinelli on a new deal, I think that would wrap it up really nicely for me. I would have loved to get a winger, more than anything. I do think that I would feel more comfortable if we had one more player in there that had some goals in them. But other than that, like, I still feel like we got the majority of what I wanted done. And I've seen enough of an improvement in the team so far. And I've seen enough improvement in the depth that I think that we can push forward and make sure that we secure top four this season. Hopefully we can go further in the cups. I hope we don't have to, you know, uh prioritize at some point. Like, I would hate for us to have to like prioritize between Europa League or the league. I'd like us to go far in both. But yeah, for me it's a 7 out of 10 window. I am disappointed not getting that additional player, and I wanted us to bring in Douglas Luiz at the last minute because of El Neni's injury. But ultimately, like, I've been very impressed with the the improvements, the recruitment, the players that have come in look like they fit straight in, and not having to rely on Tierney, being able to let Tamiyasu ease his way back into the team, seeing the way the team has gelled with the back four. I can't act like everything is ruined because we didn't get one player. So for me, it's a 7 out of 10. And had we had gotten the winger, it probably would have been a damn near 10 for me because that's what I wanted. That's what I wanted. So yeah, that's where I'm at with it. What do you guys think? What do you guys think about your ratings? I saw some fours, I saw some fives. What are you guys thinking? Elliot says a 6 out of 10 for me. Great start, sad finish. I agree. I wish we would have brought in one more player. Um, Super says you shouldn't just buy a player because there's a few injuries. I mean, they tried. I think Arsenal did kind of realize that they needed something, but they couldn't get it done. So we just have to kind of live with it at this point. Stevie J says, just don't be surprised if a freebie player without a club comes in. I would be really surprised at that. Yo-Yo says, needed a few key renewals in Neymar, Bellingham size incomings and higher sales for me to have been satisfied. Fair enough. Um, the True says Free says 6.5, 10 out of 10. Travarelli says 8.5 out of 10 for me. Yeah, I mean, some people are really high on the window, some people are not. I understand why. DV says Arsenal offered 25 million for Louise, who they can get in basically 2 months for 10 to 15, but Villa wanted 40 million. How can fans blame the club for walking away from that deal? I don't even know if it was just about that deal. I think people were upset because there wasn't another player coming in. It doesn't matter if it was Douglas Luiz or and I think it's just the realization that nobody else was coming in. So I actually don't think people were that desperate to bring in Douglas Luiz because before the window started, nobody was talking about him. It was just when we started to see that that's the player that we're going after, I think we were more attached to the idea of bringing in a player than Douglas Luiz himself. But so I didn't see many people getting upset that we didn't spend additional amounts of money on Douglas Luiz. I think it was more just we still didn't bring in another player, and people really wanted that, especially after the Elneny injury. I think did kind of put people in a state of like anger. Um, which I kind of understand. Hightower says I was going to say 6, but the fact that they convinced Saliba to stay, I'll say a 7. Um, Magambo says after 38 games, come back and talk. Okay, you guys are talking to each other. Crispy Rice says, I think we want to wait for Danilo. I think that as well. Joshua says it's a 4. Yo-Yo says, can't truly judge the window harshly until spring or several years in the future. John P says, be an 8, Saliba and Saka resign. I think it's a positive window. I really don't think it's as bad as people are making out to seem. Um, but I understand where people are upset. Guy Charles says apparently Arteta was also concerned Louise is not great defensively. Yeah, I think because it also came out that people were concerned about Tielemans and his physicality and stuff like that. They liked his personality, but they weren't convinced about him as a player. And so we didn't go after Tielemans. And also, for certain players, there's a certain threshold that you're willing to go to, especially when they only have 12 months on left on their deal. For Jesus, because he was the perfect striker for us, he was our number one target. We were willing to go above the odds for somebody like that. But for somebody that doesn't really fill all of our needs and somebody that, the club had true reservations on in Douglas Luiz and Tielemans, I can understand why they weren't willing to push the boat out. But, you know, I get why people wanted that additional player. I get that. I really do. Lone Star says already we have experienced injuries, inevitable given the number of games in such a short period. But everybody gets injuries. And here's the other thing is that every team deals with injuries, every team deals with having players out, every team deals with challenges. It's just about how you deal with them and having a little bit of luck. And so I think the idea that like no other teams deal with injuries and no other teams have a lack of depth is disingenuous. Like everybody has these issues. It's just we haven't dealt with them properly in the past. And I think some of that has been due to Arteta's inexperience and not having enough players in those positions. But I think we have more of it than we did before. And hopefully Arteta's learned his lesson. Yo-Yo says signing David Luiz for 20 plus would have confirmed the club were foolish not to get Basuma. I'm glad we didn't get the Brazilian. Fair enough. Um, Mike Hawk says 6 out of 10. I think it's right around there, like a six, between a 6 and a 7, somewhere around there. But yeah, Crispy Rice says we suffered injuries and we were 5-0. I mean, everybody gets injuries. Um, Mac some Miss Maximius says last night Jess was in a bad mood. Today it's the fans. This is so expected from fans. Go ballistic on Adu and Co because we didn't get Louise really. He's just El Neni on steroids. Yeah, I was in a bad mood yesterday because I did want us to bring in another player. But once the dust settles and you calm down a little bit more, I was never going to say that the window was a failure because we didn't get that one player. So I can analyze things in isolation. What am I disappointed that we didn't get somebody? Absolutely. But I like what we actually did do? Absolutely. And so I understand people being upset, but when I'm seeing people say, okay, the window was like an 8 before, but now it's a 4 because we didn't get one player, I think that that's kind of like, come on. The True Says Free says Jess, Saliba, Zinni, Gabriel Jesus, Vieira when ready is pretty sweet. 7 out of 10. I think it's a good window, and I also think people wanted more signings because other teams were signing players. I think I sense a level of like other teams started signing players, so then we needed to sign somebody as well. That's not really what we're doing. Um, Dev M says, I would have liked to get the fees for some of the outgoings, but overall, I'm mostly content with the quality of the squad. Me too. Okay, so let's kind of fast forward here because we only have a little bit more time left, but I want to talk about United and going away to an Old Trafford. Arteta spoke about injuries. He said on Ramsdale and Odegaard's fitness, those two are being assessed. We will see tomorrow. Hopefully, they will be able to train with the team. Unfortunately, Zinchenko, that's still not the case. He missed 2 games and has not been able to train with the team yet. There are some accounts out there that are saying that they did see them or they do know that those guys trained, but this is what Arteta is saying. Um, and so we have a little bit of like a situation here because there's a best case scenario where we have Ramsdale and we have Odegaard, and then there's a worst case scenario where we don't have them, and it's like, oh shit, what are we gonna do now? So, but I do think that Ramsdale will play. I have kind of no doubt that like Ramsdale will play. It's whether or not Odegaard will, and then we have to see what's happening with White because I don't know what's going on with White. It feels like he's it felt like he came off because he had some sort of like knock or something, but I'm not quite sure. Now, in terms of the fixture itself, like, of course, I would have preferred to play Manchester United when they were in the mud, but they're coming out of it and they're starting to feel confident. You can tell that Manchester United fans a couple of weeks ago were afraid to play us. Now they're kind of like excited to play us. So, and I expect nothing less of that group. They are notoriously overconfident all the time. And so they feel like their team is probably going to get something from the match. And again, based on history and how we do at Old Trafford, I would be maybe confident as well. But I think we're going to be the first team that they play this season since they've been winning games that is going to be at the same intensity level and can actually carry a threat. In the second half against Liverpool, when Liverpool started coming at them, they really were lucky, I think, to get anything out of that game. I think both teams were kind of lucky in that way, where Liverpool were lucky to get it, to get the goal that they did, but they were really pushing in that second half, and Manchester United really sat off of them and sat back and conceded some territory and possession and chances. But against Southampton, I didn't think that they were particularly great, and against Leicester, they weren't great. But the difference now is that they're a little bit more organized. So when we played them last season and they were really, really bad at the Emirates, they were really disjointed at the back. They were kind of laughable and they didn't have any sort of structure. Ten Hag has given them a structure. They're enjoying defending. I remember when Ramsdale and Tomiyasu and them were like geeing each other up and patting each other, like hitting each other in the back and all that kind of stuff. Um, because they want to tackle, like everybody was laughing at us, but now they're doing it. Like it's weird that now it's cool. But yeah, they're enjoying defending. Lisandro Martinez looks like a really good player. Varane looks like he's coming into himself. Malacia is a good player. So coming up against a United team that's not quite perfect, but definitely better than they were a couple of weeks ago, and probably better than the team that we played at the Emirates before. So it's going to be a hard game, especially because I think their fans are going to be excited. Like, I think at Old Trafford playing against Arsenal, they're going to be excited. They're going to try to create an atmosphere that's not comfortable for us. And so the team has to be ready for it. But this is the time that Arsenal need to show that they're not the team that they were last season. They need to be able to go away to these grounds and get something out of the game. We can't just fall apart. I do think that we played terribly against them away from home last season, where they were so bad, and we probably should have won that game, but we were worse than them. And we gave every single time we scored, they came right back and scored, and we have to be a lot smarter and control the game a lot more. And so I think we have a really good chance of getting something out of the game and potentially even winning, but it's going to be a really, really tough challenge because it's Old Trafford and they're coming into their own. They also have some really good players coming into their team. Like, let's not act like Casemiro is not a class player. And I do think they're easing him in to play against us, probably start his first match against us. We will see Anthony. I'm 100% sure we will see him at some point. They will want to debut him against us, especially if they feel like they're playing well, and I expect to see the same back line that they've been playing: Malacia, Lisandro Martinez, Varane, and Dalot. Probably Casemiro, Ericsson, and Bruno Fernandes, Rashford, Sancho, and Elanga, and Antony coming in later, potentially. So that's what I expect to see from them. What I expect to see from us is probably a team that's not our 100% starting 11, but definitely a team that can beat them. And so it's important. Like, this is a very important game to go away from home to your rivals and get something out of the game. For Arsenal to finish in the top four, we have to be able to beat the teams that are below us, and then the teams that are in and around us and above us, we have to nick points. And I think that's where we really faltered last season, is we didn't get enough points away from home at the Big Six. Like, we just didn't. I actually think we only got points at Chelsea, I think, away from home, because we lost to Man City, we lost to Liverpool, we lost to Man United, and we lost to Spurs away from home. So yeah, we only got 3 points away from home at Chelsea. And so this time around, maybe get if we could nick a draw at the very least at all of those places except for maybe one, we're in business, because at home we're so much better. So yeah, I think anything that's not a loss I would take, but I do want to see us kind of smash them, because I think they're getting confident, and they haven't played a team yet that has the threat that we have. Southampton wasn't really threatening them like that. Leicester are a joke. And so they're going to come up against us, and I want to see us really put them under pressure, but in a calm, collected way, because I do think these games could kind of get out of control. And keep all 11 men on the pitch, please, because they're going to be playing those games. I saw Lisandro Martinez shove Salah in the back at the very beginning of that match, and I thought, okay, yeah, they're all about head games as well. Z Gould says, smashed. I don't know what you guys are talking about. Joshua says, Jesus will score, but it will be a draw. And the Man United fans that are in the chat, you played Liverpool, but like, you didn't really play Liverpool, did you? Like, they were missing like 9 first team players. They were playing really badly. And so I get, you know, I get that you're like hype over it, but Arsenal are going to be different. Kay always says, why are these moaners here watching? If they don't like her balanced view, stop watching, go start your own channels and stop moaning. I mean, I want to have a balanced view, but if some other people don't have it, that's fine. Just don't abuse each other in the chat. That's all I ask. The Truth Sets Free, thank you so much for your super chat, says, insinuating in the chat that you're balanced and that's why you were on All or Nothing. No, it's because she's a legend and not towing the party line. Well, when I was on All or Nothing, I was actually saying that they didn't have a plan, and I was frustrated that they had gotten rid of Aubameyang with no plan. That's actually what I said on All or Nothing. So that's not about having a balanced view. I speak my truth. But I was on All or Nothing is because I have a good channel and I'm a good content creator. It's not because I say what Arsenal want me to say. You guys know that I speak my mind. Just because I don't believe the window was a failure doesn't mean I'm towing the party line. You guys know this. Um, you guys know this. Um, let's see. Maximius says UEFA has fined 8 clubs for breaching FFP, and we're not on the list. Amazing. I like that. Yo-Yo says Arsenal can be surgical with it as long as Zinni Odie play. Otherwise, I suspect they'll have to play in bursts again. Fair enough. Like, I do think, yeah, not having certain players that can control the tempo will hurt, like, will change the way that we play the game. So if it's like Tierney, that's definitely different. ESR would definitely be different as well. So I think that's a really, really good point. A really, really good point. So yeah, let's see. Um, yeah, you guys are weird. Like, this is definitely a Tottenham fan that I think forgets that we're at the top of the league, and I think we've scored. Let's look at it because we have no threat, right? So a team with no threat shouldn't have any goals or should have less goals than everybody else. Let's see. Let's look it up. Let's see. Arsenal, 13 goals. The only team that scored more goals than us is Liverpool and Man City. Mind you, Liverpool scored 9 of their goals against one team. So that's quite a bit of goals for a team with no threat. Um, we've given up 4 goals, which isn't bad. I think we're right up there with everybody else. So yeah, I would say that we have quite a bit of threat there because nobody else has scored more goals than us than the 2 best teams in the country. But yeah, there you go. There you go. Stuart says, I'm happy we didn't fall into panic buys, happy with the window. Good. So yeah, like that's what I'm thinking. I think it's gonna be a tough game. I do think that Manchester United are gonna come out with probably a similar energy that they did against Liverpool, but I think we will match that. You know, not only have we been playing good football, but our energy has been good and we haven't been getting pushed around. So I like that. And but it's gonna be a tough game because it always is. Like it always is. So let's go ahead and build our lineup before we get out of here. I have like just a little bit more time. You guys are distracting me with your nonsense. All right. Um, so let's get in it. Oh, I already kind of created some of it, which is fine. Um, so I know Ramsdale is going to play, even if he's not 100%. Where the Turner's first outing is not going to be at Old Trafford. There's no way. They will bandage Ramsdale up. The only issue I have with that is it looked like he had some damage to his kicking leg because he was holding his right leg. And so I wonder if that will hurt the way that he distributes from the back. But hopefully, they can bandage him up real good and he can play. Gabriel will obviously play my center back. Actually, on the other side, let's see. Yeah, he'll play on the other side. My center back. And then Zinchenko probably won't play, so it'll probably be Tierney, which is fine. It's not the same because he doesn't have the same level of like build up and he's not really a midfielder. But I thought Tierney was a lot better against Aston Villa than he was against Fulham. So he's coming back into his form. And there are some light rumors out there that White has not been training, and I'm not sure whether he has or not. Nobody brought it up. Arteta didn't bring it up. So maybe he's fine. So I'll put him in here. But I wouldn't be surprised to see Tomiyasu, which is perfectly fine because Tommy is a really good player as well. And so in midfield, it probably will be Sambi again, which he played fine. He's done nothing wrong to lose his spot. And quite frankly, we don't have anybody else to move in there. Like I saw some people saying move Zinchenko in there. He's not going to play. So maybe he will. Maybe it's mind games from Arteta. But I have this feeling he won't play. And then you have Xhaka. Worst case scenario is that Emil Smith Rowe plays, but that's not that bad. I am hoping that it's Odegaard because obviously, like, he's a game changer for us and he scored quite a bit of goals. But if it's Smith Rowe, then it is what it is. But Arteta said Odegaard is being assessed, so that doesn't mean that he won't play. And I do think Arteta might be playing it a little bit close to the chest just in case. And then we have our usual front three. I think that's a team good enough to go to Old Trafford and do something. It's not flashy. It's not, you know, it's not expensive, but it does the job. And it's basically the team that's been playing this entire time. So, yeah. And if it were to be a little bit different, I still think the team is good enough. I really do. So, yeah, what do you guys think about the lineup? Would you guys make any changes? Are you worried about anything in particular? Tomiyasu versus Sancho. I think that's a good matchup because Sancho is tricky, but he's not quick and doesn't have any power or pace. So, Tomiyasu, I think, will try to guide him in the right direction if he has to play. And I think he's a good defender, in general. I think it's just when you get up against like the elite dribblers like, Alan St. Maximin that also have power and pace, that's when it gets really difficult. But I think ultimately Tamiyasu and Saliba can do a good job on that side. Tierney against Alanga. Alanga is rapid. So if Alanga does play, I do think Tierney will have a difficult job there because of his quickness, but he's not very good at anything else. So I have to play that one by ear. In terms of midfield, I do expect them to start Casemiro and play Ericsson and Bruno. I haven't been that impressed by Ericsson, but we know what Bruno is like. And he's going to pop up into spaces in and around the front three, try to get second balls, get into those spaces out wide and stuff like that. So he needs to be watched. If he's in space, he's going to hurt you. But you just have to try to keep him off the ball as much as possible. And then, it's a matter of just making sure that we have threat up top. I don't think that since they've been playing well, they've come up against a team that's going to press them like we are. And so we'll see how good they are on the ball, and I would say go after Delo. I think he's the weakest of the players back there. So I expect Martinelli to eat. But yeah, this is the team that, I mean, if it's this, that's just what it is. We have to work it out. I still expect the team to perform. Let's see what you guys are saying. Um, Anthony, like Anthony, the Brazilian, not Martial. Martial is injured. Clive says Bruno needs man marking. He will be frustrated. He does need to be man marked. Saida says, I'm mostly worried about Lakanga. I think I'm suffering from PTSD from Anfield away. Unless I'm getting him mixed up with Tavares. I mean, they both were bad at Anfield, but Manchester United are not Liverpool. So of course they'll put pressure on him, but I don't think it'll be anywhere near as suffocating or as orchestrated as Liverpool's press in its pomp is. So I'm not as worried about him. Joshua says Casemiro will cook Sambi. Well, they won't be in the same area. Casemiro, I think you have to more worry about Casemiro suffocating Odegaard than Sambi. So I get what you're trying to do. You're trying to make it, oh my gosh, we're gonna get killed in midfield because Casemiro's there. He wouldn't even be up against Sambi. He's gonna be deep in midfield up against Odegaard. So it's a matter of, is he gonna shut down Odegaard or not? Let's see. Sean says Anthony is just a runner. He needs to run for his country at the Olympics. Fair enough. Matthias says he will cook him regardless. I don't agree with that. Travarelli said I should be scared of him. Crispy Rice says our high press will give the serious problems. Oh, it's just amazing how many Arsenal fans are like just completely disregarding everything we've done so far and acting like we're not going to play well at all. It's wild to me. Yo-Yo says the Xhaka performance matters more than the previous five. Yeah, it does. I mean, he needs to step up in that midfield if that's who's actually out there. Z says, Jess, how are you gonna react when we press you? That is the question. If we press you hard, it's gonna be mistakes from you guys. Maybe, but maybe not. I don't think your press has been anything spectacular. You didn't really press against Leicester and you didn't really press against Southampton. If you guys press us, then we have to be on it, but we can press you guys back. Like, you're not known for some fabulous press. Like, let's not get it twisted. Kafunso says Manchester United got players good on the ball. We can beat them with our team cohesion. Yeah, we'll see. We'll see. Let's see. Yeah, Yasaf says just play our game without giving Man United respect and the win is ours. I think it's like a mental thing as well. Like you're not playing Man United of old, you're playing this Man United, so don't get swallowed up by the occasion. That's the key. That's really the key. PG says Leicester and Southampton midfield was whack. That's why they lost against United. I think it's going to be a tough game. Like, I think it's going to be a tough game because of the emotions and all that kind of stuff. But I think we're more evenly matched than people are actually making it out to seem. But people, like, historically don't rate our players. And that's fair enough because they don't have big names. But then we win games and then people are like, what? I'm shocked. Like, so yeah. Let's see. Hakum says Jesus will struggle. How so? How so? You know, give more backup to that. Um, Trav Travarelli says, my front line is about to show you. Ronald says, if Arsenal go a goal behind, it will be tough for them. Potentially. Um, Potentially it could be, but I don't know. I think the first goal definitely does matter, but also, I don't think it's gonna be like a goalless game and it's gonna be, like, so tight. Like, I do think it could end up being a little bit more open than people are making it out. Um, Hakum says, "That's the best pairing we faced so far. Jesus might struggle." Fair enough, if you think he'll struggle, but he won't be up there alone, and so, I don't know. I feel like I don't sense very much, like, confidence from Arsenal fans. It's interesting. We always play like the meek and lack in confidence kind of group. And I feel like that's why nobody gives us any respect, is because, I mean, if your own fans don't believe in you, then who will? Which is kind of sad. Jordan says Man United don't press high, not yet. They don't even play out of the back. They try winning the first and second balls in midfield. Don't get it twisted. They win ugly. I'm not that worried. Yeah. Thab says we're not evenly matched. We are better than Man United. I think the way that we play and how we're set up and how much further along we are in our project, we are better than them at the moment. They do have individuals that can hurt you, so that's a big thing. Um, but, also, like, you're saying Varane and Lissandro, but Jesus has played at the highest level, like, he's no scrub, and so I would imagine that maybe other players in our team that aren't used to playing at the highest level may struggle a little bit more, but Jesus, like, I'm not quite sure that he's, like, this scrub that's not gonna be able to get into the game. So yeah, but let's go ahead and get into our score predictions. I do have to go soon, so let me know what you guys think. I think it's going to be a 2-2 draw. I think it's going to be goals in this game. I think it's going to get ugly. Not going to lie. I think this is going to be our first like test in terms of like an emotional mental test because United, a lot of times we play the kit, we play the jersey, and we play the badge, and we don't actually play the team that's out there. And I think if we play the team that's out there, we'll play pretty well, to be honest. So yeah, I'm going with a 2-2 draw. I just think it's going to be a super emotional, crazy game. And they're going to get at least one penalty. Jordan says 3-2 Arsenal. Neo says it's a win for Arsenal. We are more composed than them. We're winning 3-2. Michael says 2 United for Ars. Um, Mike says 2-1 to the Arsenal. Stuart says Man United 1, Arsenal 2. Ronald says, let's get a wild prediction 3-3 draw. I think it could be a game like that. Yasaf says Arsenal 2, Man United nil. Yo-Yo says with Odie, Zinni 2-0, without 2-1. Nice. Tottenham fan says 4-2 Man United. Hamza says 3-1 to the Arsenal. Z Gold says 4-1 United. Feel like we will smash you guys. You need to get your eyes checked. Mama Flossie says great stream, Jess. Thank you. Ultima Spell says 2-0. Come on, you Gunners. Clive says 3-2 Arsenal win. Oren says Man United 0. Arsenal 2. Yeah, I think we'll be all right. I think we'll be all right. I think we're gonna play well. But yeah, I think it's gonna be more of an emotionally charged, lots of fouls. I'm kind of hoping, like, of course, I want to smash them and I want to just win, but I'm kind of hoping that this is the beginning of like some sort of rivalry between the two teams because that's all I really grew up with. And I know that sounds weird because I wouldn't want Man United to be good, but I miss those days so much. So yeah, I think it's going to be a good game. 2-2 I'm going with. And yeah, I'm going to go ahead and get out of here, you guys. I really enjoyed this. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, and I'll be on the football terrace in a couple minutes.